guys, happy New Year's Eve. Now before we get started, if you guys have not seen my Flute Center of New York review videos, I need to let you guys know a couple of things. I have a code, JAF, that you can use to get a couple of perks. Number one, you get free domestic shipping within the US. You will be charged for the shipping when they ship the flutes for you on trial, but when you ship it back to them, they will refund it back to you. Number two, you get an extended 10-day trial. Usually it's only 7 days. Number three, you get an extended 18-month warranty on your new flute. And number four, you can take up to 3 instruments out on trial at a time. Please only use my code if you are actually in the market to purchase a flute. Now, just to be transparent, I do earn a commission on each flute that is purchased using my code. So if you want to purchase an instrument, you really can just go to their website and use my code. But if you want to take flutes out on trial, you have to email or call them, and I'll put a link to their contact page down below. When you are trying flutes, take off all rings and super dangly jewelry that can potentially scratch the flute. Never use the cleaning rod, the polishing cloth, or the swabbing cloth that comes with each new flute. If you do that, the Flute Center of New York has to replace them. And lastly, a quick disclaimer, every flutist plays each flute differently. So what I'm doing is just telling you guys which type of flutist would like which type of flute. All right, so we are looking at 2 flutes from the same brand today. One of these flutes is a Muramatsu Heavy Wall flute, and the other one is their standard flute, but with their Tsubasa Headjoint. Tsubasa, as far as I know, means wings, I think. These are considered pre-professional flutes within the Muramatsu line. And these are only called pre-professional because Muramatsu has even higher end flutes. These flutes are the Muramatsu GX models, but the Muramatsu DS, SR, and PTP are the ones that are considered professional in their brand. All Muramatsus have what's called the Muramatsu pad, so the pads that are used under the keys are actually made by Muramatsu. They are synthetic, and they pretty much don't need adjusting ever. Which of course means that they last a long time and they require very little upkeep. These flutes also have what's called the traditional pinned mechanism, which makes these flutes lighter. You can only get a C-sharp trill and a split E on offset G models. I'm guessing it's just because it's a lot easier to add on all of the extra mechanisms you need for the split E and for the C-sharp trill with an offset G model. The Muramatsu GX models also do not have a D-sharp roller. Now, let's see what other specs I have left off. For the Muramatsu GX Heavy Wall flute, sterling silver hand-cut head joint, sterling silver body with silver plated mechanism, pinned mechanism, drawn tone holes, French open hole model, pointed key arms, gold springs, Muramatsu pads. Here's the interesting part. This is a heavy wall flute. The wall of the tube is 0.018 inch. The standard wall thickness is usually 0.016 inch. This is tuned at A equals 442 Hertz. This has offset G, C-sharp trill key, B foot joint, and yes, it is handmade in Japan. Let's move on to the standard flute, the Muramatsu GX with the Tsubasa style head joint. Sterling silver hand cut head joint, Tsubasa style. Sterling silver body with silver plated mechanism, pinned mechanism, drawn tone holes, French open hole model, pointed key arms, gold springs, Muramatsu pads. And this one has the 0.016 inch tubing. Also tuned at A equals 442, offset G, C-sharp trill key, B foot joint, handmade in Japan. The Tsubasa head joint has what looks like 2 little wings on the side of the lip hole. I have seen a similar style before, and typically when there are little wings on the side of the lip hole, it just kind of aids in guiding the airstream in a little bit more of a precise way. The difference in weight between these 2 flutes is insane. When I was trying the heavy wall flute, after about 15 minutes, I started to get really tired. Oh, this thing is heavy. I'm a tiny Asian person. Heavy wall flute is a little bit literally heavy for me. I thought it was really interesting. Both of these flutes have certificates of authenticity signed by the president of Muramatsu America. From what I can tell, this is not printed on. This is like this dude's actual signature. I noticed that both cases, the left hinge for some reason doesn't really like to close all the way when you just kind of lightly click it shut. I noticed that you kind of have to push on it a little bit more. I don't know if it's just because I tend to close the case more on the right side and so the left side doesn't latch as much. Just be careful about that. They have this cute little branded patch that they have sewn onto the outside of the cover. The actual case itself, I did not notice this until I looked at it more closely, but they actually have their logo engraved on the hinges themselves. And then there's this little plate here that has their logo and their name. They obviously went to great lengths to design this, and I really appreciate it. All right, so now to actually try these flutes. Let's start with the standard flute with the Tsubasa Headjoint. You only need to blow very lightly to get a huge sound on this flute. I am not sure if that is due to the wings on the Tsubasa Headjoint style, but I am just blown away by how big of a sound you can get by not even putting that much effort into it. The mechanism is extremely light. Like, holy crap, I don't think I have yet tried a flute with mechanism that is this light. That means that you can go really, really, really fast. For some people who like to have a little bit of resistance, this may not be the one for you, but for those of you who like to have that super light feeling, the Muramatsu has their mechanism down. Now here's the really interesting part about this flute that I noticed. In order to get this flute to ring, you need to play with more of the front of your mouth. So starting from the middle of your mouth to the front, that's where you need to be super open. I visualize like an invisible ball inside of my mouth. If I'm aiming my airstream lower, I will rotate the ball forward like this. If I want to aim my airstream higher, I rotate the ball backwards towards me. It does two things. It keeps that part of your mouth open, which gets the ring out of this flute. But at the same time, it allows you to move the airstream wherever you want. Now, the side effect is that you don't feel like you have to use your lips as much. Literally, you are directing the air from the inside of your mouth. You're not consciously moving your lips up and down, which I thought was a really interesting way of playing. If you did one of the top harmonics on D, you would get A6. I noticed that that note is extremely resistant. But whenever I use the gizmo, I actually can reach the gizmo on this thing. Side note, it pops right out. I tried this with C7 as well, and I noticed there's a huge difference. That C7 on this flute is extremely resistant. It doesn't want to come out. But if you use the gizmo, it just pops right out, no problem. The gizmo on this flute is actually extremely useful. Now, in terms of articulation on this flute, the lighter your tongue is, the clearer your articulation is going to be. My suspicion is that this is due to what I was talking about earlier about that ball being sort of in the middle front of your mouth, kind of right behind your teeth. If you're tonguing like crazy, you're gonna be obstructing that space that you need in the front of your mouth. When you're tonguing, you're not tonguing like this, you're not attacking, you're more retracting, and you're retracting down and back. That way, it keeps this front part of your mouth open. The other thing is that because all of the ring is coming from the front of your mouth, I think that's why it emphasizes whatever tiny movement you do with your tongue. If you are a hard tonguer, this may not work very well for you, but if you are one of those really light tonguers that feel like on other flutes your tonguing sounds kind of muffled, but you still want to maintain that light tongue, this flute will work really well for you. In terms of flexibility, it's exactly what I said before about how it's more about what's going on the inside of your mouth than on the outside. So it does feel like you can be extremely flexible on this flute. You can span multi octaves and feel like it doesn't take a whole lot of lipping because all of the action is happening on the inside of your mouth. Dynamics on this flute, holy crap. You can pull back like freaking crazy. Because this flute is so responsive, you can put in just like a little bit of air and maintain it. However, it is pretty easy to overblow because it's so responsive. But if you're the type of player who does not put in a heck of a lot of air into your flute, this is going to work so well for you. Now, the side effect of being able to maintain such a tiny sound is that whisper tones are extremely easy on this flute. Now, let's look at the Muramatsu GX Heavy Wall flute. To get the ring on the heavy wall flute, you do not use the middle to front of your mouth. Instead, that ball that you are rotating inside of your mouth has to move back a little bit. Not all the way back to the back of your throat. It's sitting sort of starting at the middle of your mouth and sort of filling up the space behind it. I thought this was really interesting because that means that Muramatsu has managed to make flutes within the same model work for different mouth formations. There are some people who are more comfortable using the front of their mouth to open up and get the ring out. And then there are those of us who are more used to using sort of the middle to the back of the mouth instead. The only extra thing about the heavy wall flute is that you do need to use a thicker, faster column of air. Same idea for that top harmonic on D, the one that gives you an A6. It's very resistant until you add the gizmo. And then same idea with the C7. The C7 is also pretty darn resistant, but once you add the gizmo, boom, it pops right out. The articulation on the heavy wall flute is pretty interesting. You need to lay very low. Because now your invisible ball that you are rotating in your mouth is now in the middle to back of your mouth. That's where your tongue likes to sit. As long as you keep it down and back, this flute will maintain its ring even when you're articulating. But if your tongue retracts and sort of sits in the middle of where that ball is supposed to be, you'll notice that it'll cut off a lot of ring and it'll actually cut off a lot of volume. Flexibility on the heavy wall flute is the same idea as the standard tubing. It's just all about how you're rotating the ball. Because the invisible ball is further back in your mouth, I notice it requires even less lipping. Because the Tsubasa Headjoint, when you're moving that ball further forward in your mouth, it makes your lips move more. But I notice that when it's in the back of your mouth, your lips move less. Just be careful when you are rotating that invisible ball. It's very easy to kind of let your tongue wander up. Again, just make sure your tongue lays down and back. Dynamics on the heavy wall flute. You cannot pull back as much as on the standard tubing Tsubasa Headjoint style, but you can do so with effort. However, you can go to town pushing on the heavy wall. I think for fun, I decided to put in as much force as it would take to finally overblow the heavy wall. It took a lot. I almost never use that much air to get anything out on the flute. It's not the most in your face loud even when you're pushing like crazy. So it's very obvious that this flute is made for people who just naturally put in a ton of air into their flute, but they want to maintain that nice flutey quality that's not in your face all the time. You know, like sometimes you want to play lyrical stuff. It'll just kind of like dial your volume down. So if you find that you need that, the heavy wall will work really well for you. Now, the other side effect of the heavy wall flute being able to withstand a lot of air, I find that it's actually even easier to get a whisper tone on it and to get that whisper tone to be really loud. Also, you can just maintain the most control over the whisper tones. It's insane. I think I was even able to do like different harmonics of whisper tones, which I've never been able to do on other flutes. Both of these flutes are incredible masters of control. The Muramatsu GX Heavy Wall flute costs $6,775 on the Flute Center of New York website. And the Muramatsu GX Standard Tubing with Tsubasa Headjoint costs $6,725. So really, you're just picking and choosing which one works for you. Let us know if you guys have more requests to see other flutes in the Flute Center of New York stock. Be sure to like the Flute Center of New York on Facebook, follow them on Twitter and on Instagram. If you guys like this video, make sure you give me a big thumbs up and hit subscribe for new videos every Saturday. My last video is over there, and if you want to catch me during the week, my social media networks are down there. But otherwise, I will see you guys next year. Bye. Tsubasa, as far as I know, means wings, I think. And I only know that because I played a little bit of Tokyo Mirage Sessions. One of the main characters' name is Tsubasa. Anyway.